All right, JJ. Thank you for having me, or thank you for letting me do this interview with you.
Sure.
So today, we're just going to kind of talk about your entrepreneurial journey as a CEO and a business owner. So one of the questions I usually first ask my interviewees is, let's say that your house is on fire. I hope this never happens to you, but let's say your house is burning down, and you can only run in and save one physical object. No pets, no people. If you were to run in and save one object, what would it be?
Can I save pets and people?
They're already safe.
Like,
They're
okay,
already
good.
out.
That's
yeah, they're safe.
You put me in a moral dilemma.
Yeah, no.
So, just one thing. Oh gosh, I can't think of one thing I would save really. Once the people and the pets are saved, I hate to say it, but maybe my laptop. Even though there's nothing on it that would be really a value that I couldn't get some other way. That's where my mind goes first. Gosh, that's a tough question because I don't feel like I care about too much physical things.
Right.
Maybe that's kind of sad because you got a lot of pictures and we have a box up in our storage that has all the kids' stuff in it. But if there was a fire, I wouldn't be compelled to go and run and grab that box. I guess because I wouldn't worry that much about it.
Right.
What kind of answers do you normally hear from people?
I mean, I think that is a good answer. I might start having to switch up my starting question because a lot of the answers that I do get is like a lot of the physical things they're replaceable. So you don't you don't really have any I'm sure there's some sentimental connection, but when it comes down to it, it's like the memories and like the stuff like that. So a lot of people said like somebody had like a board of pictures on their kitchen wall that they said they would run and grab, or like a hard drive with a bunch of a bunch of family memories. But nobody really has one specific physical object.
Well, yeah, because so many of our photos are in the cloud. So much of our it's like what's really left physically that is so irreplaceable that you would be upset if it was gone.
Right.
And I can't think of anything really.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's weird to like when I think of asking somebody that question, I'm like, ooh, I wonder what kind of answers they're going to get. But like, you really think about it, like, there's really no reason to run into your house on fire to save one physical object.
No, not in my world.
Okay, so now that we got that question out of the way, let's move on. So you are the owner of the Dale Carnegie franchise. So you guys do a lot of like sales training and all that. So you didn't start that, you just own the franchise, right?
Correct. Yeah, the business has been around for 107 years, almost 107 years.
Okay, gotcha. So what made you, or did you know from a young age that you were going to be an entrepreneur or be a business owner? Like, was there something you could tell, like maybe a lemonade stand, or were you like flipping candy in your classroom or something? Could you tell?
Yeah, so many of those stories that I've heard people talk about that they were destined for entrepreneurism or to be a business owner. No, not really. I at an early age, the only thing that I really found that was even close to that was, gosh, how old was I? 10 or 12 when the original Nintendo came out. Maybe I was 9. I don't remember how old I was. And the internet was really early. WordStar was the only way you could type up a Word document. 27K internet modem was the fastest as lightning as you could get. And the internet actually wasn't even visual yet. You know, it was like Gopher. It was just all text. And so there was no real information highway at this point. And me and my buddy, we were huge gamers, if you want to call us gamers back then. We were talking original Nintendo, man. I mean, Super Mario Brother, Duck Hunt, and that one with the robot that I can't even remember what it was. It wasn't even a robot. It was just a little mechanical thing that moved these discs around. And so we created this newsletter. It's like a gaming newsletter. And we went to Toys R Us. This was in Roanoke. And we asked them if because we were typing this thing up on WordStar and then printing it on his dad's printer and then stapling it, if we could actually sell these newsletters. And we had a freemium model where we wanted to start giving it away and display it. And we go there to Toys R Us and they're like, no, you're not going to do that.
Really?
So we just quit. We didn't have any. There was no other outlets. It's the only place you could buy games. There was no video gaming stores back then. It was the only place to buy video games was Toys R Us. So that dream ended. And I never really had much of an entrepreneurial spirit after that I could tie into like making money and in a business per se. It wasn't. The one thing, Jake, that was evident in me is I didn't like to take orders. I was very independent. I didn't like having a boss. Those were some of the core characteristics I think that I possessed at the time. But I never really thought it was a dream to own my own business. I just did not do well with authority.
Right. Yeah, I think my dad was the same way. Yeah, he hated having a boss. He's like, one of his things that he always says is, I feel bad for whoever would be the boss of me. Like, I would not envy that person.
Yeah.
So you didn't have anything growing up. Did you go to any colleges?
Yeah, I went to Roanoke College.
Roanoke College?
Yeah, I'm from Roanoke and actually got my associate's degree at community college first.
Okay.
That kept me out of jail. I had no idea what I wanted to do out of high school, so I went and just studied, and that worked out pretty well for me. It kept me grounded, kept me out of trouble, gave me a goal, and I accomplished that. Then I went to Roanoke College to get my 4-year degree. I transferred in.
Gotcha. And what did you major in?
Accounting.
Accounting.
Oh,
wow.
yeah, man.
You're going to be a
Bean
big finance guy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, there's a huge difference between finance and accounting.
Okay.
Yeah, being a finance guy is understanding markets and bonds and those kind of things, right? Accounting is simply the back office books.
Gotcha.
I was a book guy. Yeah.
So that obviously didn't work out. Did you ever get a job doing any accounting?
I actually worked part-time at a CPA firm while I was in college.
Okay.
And did not like the work. Just didn't like it.
Gotcha.
It just wasn't stimulating for me. It just wasn't my cup of soup.
So was anything going through your mind at that point in your life? Like, I just got this accounting degree and I've been doing accounting.
I hadn't even finished yet.
Yeah, I'm working towards this accounting degree and I already don't like doing it. So were you like, was there any like fear that you had, or?
I just figured I could find something else to do with the degree.
Okay.
And I still sat for the CPA exam, sat 3 times. The best I ever did was the first time I took it. It kept getting worse and worse because I did not have a goal of working at a CPA firm, and the place that I worked at, which was an accounting job, did not require me to have a CPA. So I didn't put my heart into it.
Right.
I actually got into the payroll business, which was kind of quasi-business, quasi-accounting business, but it was more on the hardcore business side of operations.
Okay. That's cool. So what led you to Dale Carnegie?
That payroll company put me through the Dale Carnegie course.
Okay.
I was a new leader. Let's see, I went to work there when I was 23 years old. So I was probably 25, 26 when they put me through the program. They put me and 2 others as a leadership development tool, and took the course and just loved it. I didn't realize I loved that kind of stuff. I really wasn't into it before I took the program.
So it was kind of a birth of this new like interest in sales.
I wasn't a big reader. I didn't get into personal development or professional development. It just wasn't. I guess because I was never exposed to it, which bothers me so much in my practice today, because a lot of people just aren't exposed to it. No one says, here, you should really read this book, or no one invests in them by saying you should really go take this program. I think a lot of people, most people are not wired to seek these things out themselves until somebody introduces it to them, and it's usually a parent.
Right.
Usually that. So I'm waiting for my kids to come of age whenever I say, all right, you're going to read How to Win Friends and Influence People. They're not there yet.
Yeah, I actually have that book sitting on my nightstand. I'm going through it right now.
Get to it, Jake.
It's like, I feel like that's, would you say it's like the backbone of like all personal development books?
So Dale was one of the founding fathers, along with Norman Vincent Peale and Nightingale, and they were called the founding fathers of modern day professional development, because they were all around the early 1900s, and their works are still the best-selling nonfiction books every single year. So whether you use the word backbone, we tend to use the word foundation. That's so much is built on. Absolutely becomes a must-read, a core ingredient of someone understanding themselves, but more importantly, understanding other people.
Gotcha. That's pretty cool. So you got into Dale Carnegie, or you went through the training course, and you were like 25, 26.
Yep.
How long did you work, or were you doing sales for this payroll company?
No, I was actually in operations.
Okay.
My job was to get people paid.
Okay.
And we had a team of people to make sure people got paid.
So did that Dale Carnegie course help you do that job better?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's very high stress situation. A lot of people don't know that Dale wrote 2 major books. The first one that most people are familiar with, How to Win Friends and Influence People. The other book was How to Stop Worrying and Start Living.
Okay.
He was big on stress management. it's a huge barrier to being able to have effective relationships and to be an effective leader if we're bound up with stress all the time. And that's what this job was for me. Like it felt like a 24/7 operation, because there's a couple things you don't screw with people, and one of which is their money.
Right.
And so it's usually very time sensitive. It has to be absolutely accurate. A lot of people live paycheck to paycheck, so if money's not there in their account at a certain time, their mortgage isn't going to get paid. If their mortgage doesn't get paid, it hits their credit report. Bad things can happen when you screw up people's money, Jake.
That's true.
And so, so everyone's stressed. It's high pressure all the time. It would never be fair to compare it to an emergency room per se, but I would say it's the closest you could get to a business's emergency room is payroll operations.
Yes. Payroll is super important if people aren't getting paid, like you said. Credit report.
And it's easy to mess it up.
Yeah, definitely a high stress situation. So, what led you to quitting that job? Or were you fired, or how did you?
I was fired. Thanks for bringing that up, Jake. It goes back to what we said at the top of the show. I've just never been good with authority, and still to this day, I'm 45 years old, and I still like things my way, right?
Right.
I mean, I think we all do to a certain extent. If you're a natural leader, you can't help but to see it a certain way. You can't help but to have a very particular vision of the way something needs to be. Now, all the things between that and reality, you need to be flexible with. But I was 25, 26 years old. I wasn't flexible. There wasn't a flexible bone in my body. I mean, I was still a fairly arrogant person. And taking the Dale Carnegie course was the first step in starting to break all that down for me and start helping me get out of my own way. Okay. And I came to work for the company. And when you're immersed in it by working with other people, and I will commonly say when I am in the classroom with someone, I'll probably get more out of this than you will. This is like the umpteenth, trillionth time I've done this. But that's part of the growing process, is never to feel like you're above it. That's part of the leadership process, right? It's never feel like you're above it, never feel like you've earned everything, never feel like you've arrived. That every day you're very much starting over as a very flawed human being. And how do I make today just a little bit better by focusing on what I can do a little bit better, not for myself, but for someone else?
Gotcha. I think one of the important things as a leader is that you have to remain teachable.
Yes.
I think it's a good way to put it. Like, you don't want to ever feel like you've learned and you've maxed out and you know everything. You always want to be, no matter who it is, like you can learn something from them, and you never want to feel above them.
And we would use the word in Carnegie, coachable instead of teachable.
Okay.
Because our education system is very much designed to teach all the way through college. Just you sit and learn, and then I will take my knowledge and bestow it upon you so that you will have more knowledge. But when you get out past education, dare I call it the real world, right? We have to be coachable, because you're now trying to fix things, the proverbial airplane at 30,000 foot while it's flying. Right?
Gotcha.
You can't take a time out to go be taught something. You have to be coachable in the moment. In the moment, you have to say, okay, what could I do better right now? But you can't, in some cases, you can't even slow down what you're doing to get a little bit better at it. You have to keep going at that pace.
That is true.
And so oftentimes I find people all the time that aren't coachable. So we have to ask, are you coachable? Because once someone gives permission to be coachable, then when they stop being coachable, which happens often, you can kind of remind them, you gave me permission to coach you.
Gotcha. Yeah. Do you get a lot of people that say, no, I'm not coachable?
At most, someone will say it depends.
Okay. Yeah.
They're not
Sometimes
ready.
that could be hard.
They're not ready to fully commit to being coachable yet. But most of the time, like 90+% of the time, they'll say, sure, whether they are or not. Of course I'm coachable.
Yeah.
And then, the rest of the story is you don't tell them any, in teachable moments, you tell them something. In coachable moments, you ask them a question.
Gotcha. I like that. So so you're going through and you're help training these people through your Dale Carnegie process. How many guys do you have going through that right now?
Oh, well, let's see. In my territory, we probably, in our core programs, I would say we impact, when I say core programs, it's a long-term commitment. It's not like a one-session thing. They're typically 24 to 40 hours of total involvement with it, about 300 people a year in my territory.
Okay. So you're helping 300 people with sales coaching. Nice. And you get a lot of fulfillment when you see them get results?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because so most of the training we do is around communications, human relations, leadership, self-confidence. attitude management. Sales training is a very small part of what we do now. And in those training programs, especially since we're spending so much time with them, we'll hear about their changes pretty quickly.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So do you ever work like one-on-one with these people?
Every once in a while.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not our model. There's a lot of great coaches out there. That's all they do. One-on-one coaching is very different than group training. The biggest drawback that you have in one-on-one coaching, it's just you. Let's say you are being coached. Have you ever been through formal leadership coaching of any sort, one-on-one?
I would say
where you
the
paid
most
money for it.
So
then that starts to change even more.
It does. So I know. So we've gone through. My dad has a guy that we get on a phone call every week.
Okay.
And he helps coach us through the business. He helps me out with like the marketing side of the business and
Good.
helps dad through all. So I'm not paying for that.
But it's one-on-one.
Yes. It's,
Okay.
Well, 1-on-2 with me and my dad, but still kind of, yeah.
So take that. So one-on-one is even still very different because one-on-one is designed to get incredibly personal, right? The drawback there is it's just you and that other person that has a very finite view of who you should be. Okay?
Gotcha.
And it's very much driven, in many cases, not all cases, but good coaches will get out of the way and let someone figure it out for themselves. But still, a big part of coaching is someone taking their worldview on you and helping you place it upon yourself, if that makes any sense. When you get into a group of people, especially people that you are mostly strangers with, the coach, our trainer, they become more of a guide on the side than the sage on the stage. So really, it's iron sharpening iron with these other people in a room. You're changing yourself based on what you're seeing within a larger group of people. When I say larger group of people, we're talking about 20. Okay. We're not talking about like 100.
Okay.
Because then you're not getting to know hardly anybody in there. But in our training, you become incredibly familiar, dare I say, intimately familiar with people's lives, because people will share things that they're not sharing anywhere else. They may tell their spouse a little bit of this. They may tell one of their employees a little bit of this. They may tell their boss a little bit of this. But we're the only place where they're sharing that full picture, which can happen in one-on-one coaching. But as I just mentioned, you get that very, very small point of view on things.
That is true.
And it's amazing when you get 20 people together how change is accelerated. Because a big part of it also, Jake, is people get out of their comfort zone in front of other people. You're not necessarily out of your comfort zone with one person.
Especially if it's just like a phone call or something, not face-to-face.
Correct.
Yeah, we go, my dad, Randy, and I, we go on a mastermind, or he's in a mastermind group. And so about once a quarter, he'll go and meet with about 10 other business owners that work in the same exact business that that we do, except for we're not competing. They're like out of state, around the country, scattered. And those meetings are extremely valuable to him because he's able to go and ask that group of people and get that whole mastermind effect where you can get other people's opinions into things. And I think that's super valuable as well, on top of like a one-on-one per se coaching.
Totally.
Awesome. So let's move on. When did you start the Great People Show?
It was June 1st, 2017.
Okay. So
first show.
It was a ways into after you've been doing the Dale Carnegie training.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I was 16, 17 years into it.
Okay. So
after the show started.
What led you to start the show?
So I received a referral from one of our graduates to the general manager of a radio station in Chester, Virginia, to take a Dale Carnegie course. He's kind of new into the role, and he wanted some development for himself. And he gave me a tour of his studio, or of the station, which there was a few studios in there, and they had these pop-up banners that they used for marketing purposes that showed some of the local personalities, most of them political, because anytime you go to a talk radio, it's almost always going to be political. And I just simply asked the question, how do these people get radio shows? And he was telling me a little bit, and he asked me, he goes, are you interested? I was like, I don't know. Have you ever heard of something called Blog Talk Radio? This was like a website 20 years ago. It's not a long time ago, Jake. 20 years ago.
Yeah,
Blog Talk
20,
Radio
so
came. So when you were born, this website was there for you to create radio stations on the internet.
Okay.
But it just wasn't it just like
Basically
now
like an
now
old
it's the way you
podcast
consume
platform.
audio, right? Yeah,
Right.
yeah, right. And I had this aspiration of actually having a show on there, but I just never really pursued it hardcore. So I just didn't do anything with it. And that just popped into my mind when he said that. I was like, oh, that'd be kind of fun. Because there's so many things I wanted to do that are not within the parameters of my Dale Carnegie business to be able, because as I mentioned a moment ago, you're in these private settings all the time. What if you could take some of these challenges that people have and put them for the world to hear about? And the irony here is Dale Carnegie had a radio show in the early 1900s.
So you feel like it was only fitting that you could.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Right. Let's do something. And I felt like it needed its own brand. It needed to be new and different. And there's a whole long story. I had a couple parameters that I wasn't going to buckle on in order to do this. Is I needed to be on Facebook Live, so they hooked up Facebook Live inside the studio. They'd not done that before.
Oh, nice.
I wanted a co-host. I'm not the guy that's going to sit there and just talk and talk and talk and talk. I wanted someone to banter with. And of course, on live radio, because sometimes the show has been, we started recorded, then we went to live radio, then we went back to recorded. The challenge is finding a good time spot and enough distribution to have enough callers to call in. But we were getting callers on live radio. And I could actually bring callers in on recorded. I would find people to call a show. Because what we would always do, still do, is every Monday night we go to social media with a research question. And then we'll get a ton of feedback on those research questions. And then I will reach out to a couple people to say, hey, you want to call into the radio show to talk about that? So it becomes very interactive. I feel like it needed to be interactive.
Oh, yeah,
like
for sure.
Because that's what I like to listen to. I like to listen to people interact. I can only listen to someone just talk, but for so long before
Right.
I'm like, I'm not paying attention anymore.
Right.
You know?
And then it turns into a
Yeah.
lecture.
Yeah.
Okay. So you said you had a co-host. How did you meet him?
Well, my first co-host was actually an intern from Longwood College.
Okay.
She had just started with me in May. And I was thinking, who could be my co-host? And I was like, oh, she has a great voice. I wonder if she would do it. So I just asked her one day, I was like, do you want to co-host a radio show with me? And she's like, what? I'm just an intern. I was like, well, I've never done it either. So we'll learn it together. So she was an absolute nervous wreck. We got through our first show, which was not live at all. We just, we did Facebook Live. And I was like, wow, this is so much fun. Let's keep doing it. Well, she had to go back to college. So I had a couple people just come into the studio. And then James, who's my co-host now, we met in Rotary years ago, and he noticed it on Facebook. And he just reached out to me one day, and he said, hey, if you're ever looking for another co-host, I'd love to help. I used to do radio in college.
Nice.
I was like, well, I'm glad you're looking because I need a co-host. And he's been my co-host ever since.
That's awesome. I think the first time we ever met, I think it was at a restaurant.
Yep.
We had lunch, I believe. That had to be when you were first starting the Good People, the Great People show.
It was probably close.
Yeah, I still remember getting your card, and it had the Great People show logo on it. So that was pretty cool
Yep.
talking about that.
Yep.
And then now, 2 years later, how far it's come.
It's still around.
Still around, still doing good, and it's still growing, I assume.
Yeah, and it's very. We've always been challenged with, is this a radio show or is this a podcast? Because if you look at the audio media world right now, radio is being disrupted. So they're embracing the podcast side of things. And radio is typically, it's fast, it's furious, it's cut off, it's cut up into segments to catch people just listening in bursts. Whereas if you're going to sit down and listen to a podcast, you're probably going to listen to it in the background or in the car, and it's called long form audio. I mean, the average podcast I think is 37 minutes long. Of all the podcasts out there, the average is 37 minutes long. Some of them are 5 to 10 minutes. Some of them are 2 hours.
Right.
Kind of, you've got fiction, nonfiction. You got all these different things going on that you consume this audio. So when we are creating this show, we for a long time struggled with: are we creating this for a radio audience? Or are we creating this for a podcast audience? Because it's two very, very different things, and it's trying to toe the line between those two things. And at the end of the day, we said we're a radio show. We have to be. We're on the radio. We're created for radio first. Well, distribution in radio is still very, very difficult. It's still captured by Monday through Friday people that have daily shows that are running 3 hours each day. And to break into that, you've pretty much have to create a daily 3-hour show,
Right.
and then sell it to 1,500 radio shows across or radio stations across the United States. that they have to decide to take something else off to put you on, and they want you to pay for that airtime.
Right.
Or you need to be popular enough that you can bring an audience with you, and then they can sell some advertising.
Correct.
And if you go on weekends, it's a whole different. Whereas podcasting, you can distribute podcasts however, whenever you want to. Unfortunately, because there's no barrier to entry, you could pick up your phone right now, start recording, and upload it, and you've got a podcast.
Yep.
There are, last time I checked, close to 800,000 podcasts on Apple Podcast right now, which is the largest distribution platform.
Episodes or just like people
just
doing
shows.
it?
No, that's just shows.
Wow.
That's not episodes. But 70% of them have done something called pod faded, meaning they have not had an episode uploaded in 6 months.
Okay, so just kind of get out of it.
So most podcasts are created with a few shows, and then people give up because they start to realize, it's funny, we went through this too. You upload your podcast, and you're like, well, it only has 5 downloads. Okay, that's me, you, my mom, and who are the 2 other people?
Yeah, it's 2 random
So
people.
then the next episode has 5 downloads. Then the next episode has 6 downloads. And you're like, this is a lot of work for 6 downloads. I get it. So people quit.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to get to hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands, it's a long road, man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it's crowded. It has to be compelling. People, when they hit subscribe, that you need to get them to keep coming back.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing it for the growth, if you're doing it for the audience, most people won't make it. You have to do these things for yourself.
Right.
You really know. You have to enjoy it, and you have to know if just 5 people listen to that show every single week. I'm hoping that those 5 people are having a life-changing moment from that, and for me, that's good enough. But for most people, it's not good enough, Jake.
Yeah, I think
They're for the wrong reasons.
Some of the gurus that I follow, they say that you can't get discouraged by that, and it's instead of like looking at those 5 people like, dang, I only have 5 people downloading my podcast. You need to look at it like, those are 5 people that are like swimming towards me, asking for my help, and those are the people that I need to be reaching out to. I think, what was it? If a boat's sinking and a helicopter had to come and save the people, let's say a boat's sinking and has 10 people on it, a helicopter is coming to save them, and it only has 5 seats. Who do they save first?
Yeah.
The people swimming towards them.
Yep.
And so you got to think about it the same way. Those are the people that are swimming towards you, so you have to save them.
Yep.
They're looking for you for help. So.
Yep.
Yeah. So, let's see. You are growing. Let's go back to Dale Carnegie. Did you have any mentors helping you through that besides just anybody specific that helped you through, like that mentored you into turning in from like what you said to staying out of jail to this like business-minded person?
The first person that brought me into Carnegie was David Lawrence, and he absolutely was my mentor. Really, probably a long story, but he left Carnegie soon thereafter, and probably not even within a year, I was very much by myself in the business. Mm-hmm. And we still stayed connected. He was still very, very helpful, but what I think I miss from those times is actually having someone to learn from day in and day out. Mm-hmm. So here I was right after the recession of 2001, which was right after September 11th. And a lot of people don't realize this, but that recession had nothing to do with September 11th. September 11th threw it further, but it was already coming. It was already there.
Right.
So I was struggling in this business that I just bought and didn't really know what I was doing. And I think it was very indicative of so many other things in my life that I was figuring it out on my own. Here I was, this independent, and I'm glad for those moments. I'm thankful that I had to learn the hard way, but it slows everything down.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
And I think if we're going to speak to anybody that is starting a business or have been in that process maybe for a couple years, if it is to be up to me kind of mentality, sure, it works. It's cheap. You can save money. It's just going to take you longer. Mm-hmm. You'll never go as fast or as far than you will with other people.
Mm-hmm. You need that. You need the other people.
Yep.
I guess goes back to like the mastermind. If you put one mind together, and then you have another mind, but then when you put them together, it creates that mastermind.
Absolutely.
like amplifies everything. So I thought
And I
that's
think,
really cool.
and I think of, so, part of that is hiring employees. I know your question was about mentoring, but it's also important to be a mentor early in your business. And if you're going to hire employees, one of my favorite Steve Jobs quotes, he's got so many of them, is we don't hire people to tell them what to do. We hire people for them to tell us what to do. And I think that's
like
really
that.
hard as entrepreneurs because you're the expert, right? You know it all. You're the one that has been around the longest, and it's your business and it's your money. And you start hiring those people and you start telling them what to do, and then you have turnover.
Right. Did you have anybody else that helped you with the Great People Show? That kind of mentors you through that, or was that you kind of went through all of that?
The station manager at the time, Asher, was really great leading me through that process of understanding what radio was all about. And there was just of course he was on the technical side of it to understand, okay, why is this happening with the audio and stuff like that. But there's so many other things that you have to learn, and which is one of the reasons why I love doing it, especially at first, because there was all these things I didn't know anything about. You sit there and listen to a radio show, and it makes sense why they talk a certain way, or why there are certain breaks here and there, or why they have to ask questions a certain way, or and then when you get into it, you realize I can't be who I've always been and be successful at this. I have to change. I have to do something a little different. So you start to ask a ton of questions, and I started listening to more podcasts and listening to more radio shows and paying attention to things on totally different levels. And Asher was really good about getting me to listen to those. Have you ever noticed when they do this or when they do that? It's like, I never noticed that. And it was just really cool to be a part of something that I knew very little about, or I guess more importantly, I thought I knew a lot more than I did.
Right.
About it. And just like the very first time of hearing yourself, you're like, oh, I can't do that. That's too weird.
Yeah.
And they look at me like, this is just, and I'm not a performer, right? I've never sang, or I didn't realize that was just a part, like you have to hear yourself.
Yeah.
You need to know what you sound like to other people in order to feel like you're doing the best job that you can, or to make some adjustments. And from that point forward, I was like, gosh, there's so many things here I don't know anything about, and didn't feel comfortable with until I got into it.
Yeah, and I kind of like pushing that, getting yourself to that level of not being comfortable, because that's like, I feel like when growth happens, like if you're always in a comfortable state, you're not like growing, you're not getting better.
Totally.
You need to push yourself to be
Absolutely. No doubt. Growth only happens out of your comfort zone.
Yep, 100%. So do you ever go on other people's radio shows to promote your Great People Show?
Not often. I've been on a couple podcasts, but I don't actively seek it out. I do have a lot of people that want to be on our show. And unfortunately, it's one of these shows where if you want to be on it, you're probably not a good candidate for it.
Gotcha.
Because the industry now is very much based on interview formats, just kind of like what we're doing here. Almost all the podcasts you listen to that are nonfiction are interview formats. And back to our previous conversation, that has not historically played well on radio. Like radio stations will not take content that is interview based.
Okay.
It's not entertaining. That's like if you're listening to political talk, the occasional interview with a politician will add value to that, but the reason you're listening to it is to hear the analysis from that person, not just to hear a ton of interviews.
Right.
Podcasting is totally different. Podcasting is long form audio. So we decided a long time ago not to bring, because once you bring a guest into the studio, you're obliged to talk to them for a really long time.
That's true.
You're in a way, you're stuck with them, right? If you're doing, because our show is 38 minutes to fill up an hour-long segment, and 30 minutes, you're gonna be with that person for 30 minutes or more. Whereas if you're bringing callers in, you can bring that caller in for 1, 2, 5, 7 minutes. If it's a value, you can keep them longer. If it's not a value anymore, you can say, all right, well, thanks for calling, and you're done.
Gotcha.
So I bring all that up is the industry is based on reciprocity too. I'll come on your show if you come on my show, and then both audiences grow. And because we've made a decision not to do that interview, I tend not to be on other shows because I'm not bringing other people in. Does it prevent the show from growing faster and further? Yes. I'm not willing to compromise what we think the show should be in order for more numbers.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that a lot of growth happens when you're able to get out and like collaborate with other radio hosts. But yeah, if it definitely takes away the integrity of the show, I would
It's not the format.
Yeah, I would not do that.
Yeah, it's not the format.
So what is your vision for the Great People Show? Where do you want to take it to?
I have no idea, Jake.
You're just going to keep
No,
going?
I don't. I really don't. I've always taken the approach with the show that I was led here as a calling to do it. If I start to make some decisions as far as it needs to be here, it needs to be there, it's probably going to be something that it was never designed to be. It's a passion project. So would I love to be on 1,500 talk radio stations across the United States? You better believe it. Am I going to make a decision that's exactly what it's going to be and this is exactly how we're going to go there? I don't feel compelled to do that. I'm just gonna let it be what it's designed to be. So,
Gotcha.
People often ask me, well, where do you get your topics from? I just listen to people. I just hear words. I hear the challenges that people have and think that would make a great show this week. Let's talk about that.
Gotcha.
So we don't even go more than a week in advance of a show topic, let alone the vision of where the show should be in a year, 2 years, in 5 years. That's just the approach I've decided to take with it.
Yeah, no, I like that.
Yeah.
So your show kind of goes hand in hand with your Dale Carnegie training. Like I feel like you kind of talk about things that goes good together or goes well together.
Yep.
Do you ever encourage your students to listen to your show?
Not really. When I go and do speaking engagements, it'll be a part of my promotion.
Okay.
Because it's typically in the introduction. I've got cards for the show that I'll hand out to people. I still find, and statistically, only 16% of the population in the United States listen to a podcast at least once a week.
Okay.
So you're still dealing with a very small percentage of the population that are even in the habit of listening to it. And most of the audience, whenever I'm speaking or training, are 30 and above, which is still not the biggest podcast audience out there. Most of the podcasts statistically are the under 30 group. So I'm not always in front of people that even if I said, listen to my show, they would even go out and do it.
Right.
A lot of people don't even know how to use the podcast. They don't even know how to listen to a podcast.
Right. Yeah, I think that's changing though pretty rapidly.
I
think,
yeah.
Especially like business owners and that demographic of people that are always out there trying to get more education and always trying to learn something. Those people are definitely on the podcast, which I feel like is kind of your target audience.
Yeah. People want to learn to grow.
Yep, definitely. So the Dale, or how did you come up with the name, The Great People Show?
I don't quite recall. It just came to me in a vision one day, and I did not write down what I was thinking about, or I didn't go through a brainstorming session or anything. There was this 2-week period where once Asher presented the idea of the show to me, and I was thinking about, well, what would the show be about? What format would I be? What name would I be? What theme song could we use? It was just all wrapped up in that whole thought process, and it just came one day. That's the only thing I remember about it. Is it just showed up in my head one day, and I remember thinking, "Oh, that would be a great show, a show title. I think I would like that. That would be good." It wasn't, I didn't see it on a billboard somewhere and go, "Oh, the great,"
Yeah.
It wasn't that magical. It
just kind of
happened.
popped up in your head.
Just popped up.
That's pretty cool. So do you ever feel the effects of burnout? Do you ever get burned out doing either working with Dale Carnegie or doing the show?
Oh, absolutely. Like and it usually comes in times of everything in life. There's things you have to do and you don't necessarily want to do. No matter what you do, there's elements of things that you just have to get done. And when a lot of things converge, and it's usually based on time, just real busy over here or real busy over here, I don't have as much time to do that as I want. I've had shows where I wanted to do the topic, but for some reason in preparation and getting it wasn't manifesting like I wanted it to. And then when we get on the show, it didn't manifest on the show like I wanted it to, because I wasn't sure exactly how it was going to manifest.
Right.
And then as soon as you're done, you're like, oh, it just wasn't good. I just didn't like that. And then I've had topics where I'm like, I don't know where this one's going to go.
Right.
I don't know where this is going to come from. And then you do the show, and it's like, I think that's one of the best shows we've ever done. It's really hard when you, I guess when you just lay these things up and let them go the way they're supposed to go, and you try to control it a lot less, it will surprise you, and sometimes it'll confirm, that wasn't going to be good, and it wasn't good. And physically, sometimes I just haven't been into it. Like I just haven't felt great.
Right.
Sometimes you're in the zone, and you're like, man, I could do this 3 hours today. Other days you're like, I'm not
going.
feeling it right now. It's a flow state. Yeah. Just totally not feeling it. And business is that way, and relationships can be that way. Everything is that way. I think we get really screwed up as a society when we feel like that there's something wrong with that.
Yeah.
No,
so you
that's
feel
just
like
part of it.
You feel like you just need to like take a break, maybe step back for a little bit to get over that, and kind of try to figure out how you fall in love with it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't. I guess everyone handles it a little bit differently. I've never been one to take a break from something just to give me a chance to figure it out a little bit, because so many things get worked out on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to decide, is this something you're even supposed to be doing? And I think a lot of people get screwed up with that too.
Yeah.
They're like, because
why?
You hit a couple bumps in the road. It's like, well, maybe I'm not supposed to be doing it. Well, yeah, you're right. Maybe you're not, but maybe it has nothing to do with those bumps in the road, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think we just become a little bit too analytical. And then on the other side of that spectrum, you got some people that don't pay attention to these things.
Right.
So they just stay in a rut because they're not listening. And then you're listening too much, and you start to psych yourself out. So, I do. I wouldn't say it happens all the time, but it happens enough where it's irritating.
Yeah.
When I'm not in the zone, and then you just decide if that's something you want to do, you keep at it, and it shows back up.
Gotcha. Another question.
Yeah.
Who else would you recommend have me interview them?
Oh, geez. I can make you a list. I got like 1,000 people that you should go interview. Even though we haven't done a lot of interviews, I think there's one of the things we're going to add to the show this year is start to have more interviews with people that we consider model being great. Mm-hmm. But here's the challenge. Those people are typically too humble and off the radar to want to come on a show like this to talk about how great they are.
That is true.
If anybody's willing to talk how great they are, I don't know if they're that great.
Yeah, that is true. You have to be humble enough.
Yeah, it's the ones that are serving community and serving people, and they don't want credit, and there's very few of those folks that you see in the public limelight. So, so I think actually that's where the gold is in these types of formats that you and I are producing with the different audio, is getting people to hear from those folks that other people never, just unless it's their family, they never hear from.
Right. Yeah. Kind of being that knowledge extractor just to get it out to the public.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Well, I think I pretty much.
Well, thanks for coming into we call this the Great People Studio, by the way.
It's awesome
studio. So thanks for coming into the Great People Studio, and hope this audio gets to a lot of people, not just because it makes us more popular, but just that it's valuable.
Yep.
And one of the questions that I'm sure you want to ask me is, JJ, how do people get to hear your radio show more? I'd love to answer that question for you.
Okay.
Our website is greatpeopleshow.com. That's the easiest place you can go. But we're on every podcasting platform out there: Google, Apple, Stitcher. Actually, Spotify is number 2 right now.
Oh, wow.
It's the number 2 listening channel. So it's Great People Show. Look us up. But of course, our website you can go to and check out all of our episodes.
Nice.
YouTube.
I think I went to your website, listened to a couple episodes the other day.
Yeah. Keep listening.
Yeah, I liked it. It's kind of like just like that personal growth kind of podcast that I like. And I listened to that. I listened to some marketing ones, the How I Built This as well.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So I'll definitely keep listening.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for coming out.
All right. Yeah, thank you.
See ya. That's what we always yell at the end of our show.
See ya.
See ya.